Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Walk With Them podcast. This is a podcast produced by Urban Saints, and today we have a very special episode. It's a bit different. My usual co-host Nessie is not with us, but instead I am joined by two lovely guests. I'm joined by Anna Everhart, my colleague from Urban Saints, who is the head of community and schools, and I'm joined by Wayne Dixon from CCI Schools, which stands for Christian Connections in Schools. And Wayne has 40 years experience under his belt. So I know that this is going to be a very informative and interesting episode. But yeah, Anna, on to you.
Yes. Okay. So I have a relational question to get us started. And Wayne, I'll start with you if that's all right. So the question is, if you could go back to your own school days, okay, what's one piece of encouragement you'd give student you that you now share with your children or grandchildren or that kind of thing? So putting you
Yeah,
on the spot, Wayne.
great question. Yeah, well, I grew up in East London in the 1970s and I went to a school called Davies Lane. I'm still in touch, actually, with the head teacher. He's in his 80s now, and it's been great to reconnect with him. And some of the conversations I would have is that take the good advice that you are given from teachers, parents, carers, and hold on to it. Don't discard it. That would be the advice that I'd like to think in some way I have held on to, but certainly could have done a little bit better with listening to what parents, carers, teachers, and my head teacher said to me way back in the 1970s.
Okay, that's good.
So good. Paris, what about you?
Um, I would say really focus in on the subjects that you feel really confident in and are your strength, no matter like what type of school you go to, even if it's not a very good school, just really hone in on the things that you're good at, and keep your head down and keep focused, and you will eventually kind of go into some really good opportunities and everything will pay off if you just stay focused and keep your head down. Yeah. How about
That's
you?
good. Yeah, I think for me, I think just the reminder of school is just a season. And so hardships that, I think back to my school days and hardships were so big and so grand. And I just felt like it was the end all be all and there was nothing
Mhm.
after that. And
Yeah.
so I think just the best of their abilities, keep a healthy perspective of there are going to be seasons and there are going to be chapters after this. And this is not the end, which I realize could be really hard sometimes, but that would be my sage advice.
Yeah, those are good. Okay, well, before I get into sharing a scripture, which is kind of going to foreground our episode, I would love for the both of you just to share a little bit about who you are, what exactly you do, just a brief summary for our listeners. So, Wayne, can we start with you?
Yeah, that's fine. So, hi, everybody. My name is Wayne Dixon. I live in Slough. I'm married. We have a son called Chris. My wife's called Joyce. I've been living in Slough for over 40 years now. I'm originally from East London, and I'm a schools worker with a charity called Christian Connections in Schools, visiting schools in Slough and Windsor and Maidenhead with my colleague Beth, who joined us recently. So, that's a little bit about me. I love music. I love sport. I'm an Arsenal supporter, which regularly appears when I'm in schools talking to children, young people, and staff about Jesus, because there's some good connections using sport and particularly football. So that's a little bit about me.
Lovely. And Anna, can you share who you are?
Yes, I can. Yes. So my name is Anna. Some of you may have heard me before on Instagram Lives or Zooms, but within Urban Saints, I'm head of community and schools lead. So looking at what community spaces can we offer to youth leaders to help you connect, to engage with one another, share ideas, pray, as well as my schools lead hat also. And that I'm looking at training, resources, and community for those who do schools work, whether paid, everyday practitioners like Wayne or church leaders, youth leaders, church volunteers who are looking at their local schools as mission fields and wanting to get plugged into their local schools. So, and then personally, yes, I am American. I know, shocker. My family and I moved over to the UK 6.5 years ago now. And yeah, love it and have no plans on leaving. Married to my husband, Andy. We've been married for 10 years. We have a daughter named Aria, and she's 8 in year 3. So, yeah. And things that I love photography, going on long walks, watching movies, listening to music, hanging out with friends. So it's a little bit about me.
Lovely.
Curious, what
Thank you for
about,
sharing. Oh,
do
what
you
about
get to
me?
introduce yourself
Oh, okay.
or?
Well, I guess for our first time listeners, I am Paris. I am, oh, what can I say? Put me on the spot.
I
I
know.
would class
Two
myself.
fun facts. Two fun
Okay,
facts
two fun
first.
facts. Outside of my work for Urban Saints, I am an illustrator. I've been a digital illustrator freelancing for many years now. You may have seen some of my work, I don't know. But yeah, that's something that I love to do, something that I'm very passionate about as well. And another fun fact, I play guitar. I love to sing, I love music. And I used to be a bit of a singer-songwriter in the back in the day. So
Whoa,
yeah.
didn't
Yeah,
know that.
well,
Excellent.
but yeah, that's about me, and thank you guys for sharing a little bit about yourselves. But yeah, let's move on. Let's get into the meat of the conversation. I have chosen a scripture that kind of will, I guess, foreground our episode. The title of this episode, I should say, is actually called Raising Faith Between Lessons. And I've found the scripture, Deuteronomy 32, verse 2. And it says, Let my teachings drop as the rain, my speech distill as the dew, as raindrops on the tender herb and as showers on the grass. And I've chosen that one because I think it kind of beautifully kind of symbolizes what your job as schools workers is. The fact that you kind of go into schools and you kind of just drop gems in between, their main curriculum, their main lessons. And you don't go in too heavily and drop a load of intense studies, but you do teach. But yeah, let's move on to our main meat of the conversation. And yeah, let's ask you some questions, Wayne, and get your insight. So Anna, would you
Okay.
like to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. So, first question for you, Wayne. You've been working in schools for over 40 years. What does schools ministry look like in the right now? And, especially in the locations you work, and how has it changed over the years?
Yeah, great question. What would it look like now? So, yeah, so I started, well, my first ever school visit around here was on Thursday, 12th of June, 1986. I remember it well, a school called Upton Court Grammar School. I was invited by a young person who wanted to start a Christian group. Her name is Heather, and she said, Wayne, would I come in? I went in, did this assembly, and the idea was she had got permission from the head teacher. I didn't just rock up. And the idea was if anyone was interested, then they could go along to be part of that group. So that was my first introduction. Then I did a couple of other schools. And in some ways, I would like to suggest that schools are very similar. The challenges and the issues might be different, but there are young people who are keen, who are enthusiastic, who've got a lot of energy and creativity. And there is a level of interest, sometimes combined with a bit of apathy. So it can be a challenge. And as was said earlier, my role isn't to go in and with my Bible and bash them over the head, but to go in and share something of Jesus. I use this phrase, making Jesus known to children, young people, and staff in the schools of Slough, Windsor, Maidenhead. That's what CCIS is all about. Beth and I are trying to do that. The shorter version is MJK. And so my hope and prayer is that going into a school, whether it's today or tomorrow or last week, is that as an opportunity to share something of what Jesus said and did to children, young people, recognizing that a lot of them are not connected with church, aren't Christians. There will be certainly around here in Slough, Windsor, Maidenhead of other faiths, but there is that fantastic opportunity in a respectful and sensitive way to be able to share Jesus with the younger generation.
Mm, I love that. I feel like as I just an aside, and you're really affirming this observation, when I meet with different schools work practitioners, they always say make sure that you have a relationship with the school. And you didn't necessarily have that, but you had a relationship with this young person that then, was the open door into the school and built relationship. Like that's just so beautiful. So
Mm.
yeah, thank you for sharing that.
okay.
Yeah. And I guess then with what you do, could you let us know what some of the challenges are that you might face as school worker, what other school workers, what are the challenges they might face, especially when you're going into schools where, maybe they're not predominantly Christian or they're just not Christian schools at all. What kind of challenges do you face and how have you overcome those in the areas that you've worked in?
Yeah. The initial challenge was, and a story that's come to mind that I might share. The initial
Yeah,
challenge was
please
when
share.
I'm going in, there was no relationship. So I'd go and say, "Oh, hi, my name is Wayne," in those early days. So CCIS, we are a local mission partner with Scripture Union. So when I first was going into schools, it was kind of cold and it was hard because there was no relationship there. And so it was trying to think, hang on a minute, we're starting from a difficult position. Now, personally, for me, it is relatively easy in that the schools that I visit, I've been going into for years. So there's relationship with older students and relationships with staff. And so they know. So for I go to a school around here, it's a Muslim girls' school, but
Okay.
they're happy to have me in. I also go to church schools. I go to occasionally I go to Eton College, which is a little bit different, but just the opportunity to be able to go into schools where there is some relationship, and that is key. And I talk about schools work being essentially about relationships and flexibility. They're two of the key words that I would use. And then usually 9 times out of 10, there is a warm reception from the staff and the pupils. They won't necessarily be agreeing with what I'm talking about when Jesus came, lived, died, and rose again. A lot of people will have issues with that. But that I have found that youngsters and staff are happy to give you a listen. And some of the best times I've had is in that what I call hanging around ministry and conversations at school proms, school productions, dance shows with teachers and young people about all sorts of things, including faith and Jesus.
That's great. I think the relationship aspect is key to any kind of ministry, really. It's not just going and enforcing something or trying to, heavily teach a certain topic, but building a connection with the people that you're going to be talking to first. And I guess that
Mm,
builds like an element of trust with them, which is really good. And I think it's interesting as well that you've mentioned the Muslim girls' school, that they've been open to having you work with them, which I think is really fantastic. Yeah.
mm,
Almost on the flip side of that is reputation would be a challenge, wouldn't it? Is maybe not being known in the school that you're trying to approach if you're brand new at school's work or involved in a church trying to get plugged into your local school.
Mm.
Would you agree with that, Wayne?
Yeah, reputation
Yeah.
is key and relationships. So, generally speaking, when a new head teacher, of which that happens quite regularly, so a new head teacher will come to a school, may have come from out of the area. So, generally, my approach would be to just drop them a line, just to welcome them, and then explain that I've been probably already been visiting that school, but recognizing that the head teacher is key. And then I'll
Mm.
say something like, it would be great if there was an opportunity to come in at a mutually convenient time to just chat with you, because they may be happy for it to continue or they may not be, but at least by having a conversation. And then if I mention maybe some of the other schools that I've been visiting, he or she will probably know those schools. And so generally I found it's not been a problem when a head teacher, who's usually the key person, has changed in the school. It's been ideal to just be able to continue. It's interesting also if a head teacher is from a school that I've been visiting, goes to another school, then that makes it really easy. But reputation, trust, flexibility, relationships, they're some of the key words.
Mm.
Mm,
And could
yeah.
I ask as well, do you also go into primary schools and secondary schools? And if you do go into both, what would you say are the main differences between obviously those types of experiences?
Yeah, personally, I will go into any school, primary, secondary, whatever. The majority of what I do is in senior schools. If you push me, because I was asked recently, I have probably had most input with sort of year six to year nines. I'm not particularly comfortable with what I call Hopefully this is not upsetting to anybody, but I call them ankle biters. That's like the very tiny 4-year-old, 5-year-old. So one time I was in a first school for an assembly, and the children were coming in, and then these little tiny ones came in, and they didn't scare me, but I'm not as comfortable with the very tiny ones. But
Right.
whereas from say year 6, so I might chat if it's appropriate about Christmas Unwrapped, Easter Cracked, It's Your Mood, which is like year 6, and then what I call a kind of 14-month cycle when they become year 7 at a senior school, and assemblies and RE lessons. My colleague Beth is just about to start something, a youth gathering for some of the Christian youngsters from some of the churches. So yeah, but I will personally go into any school. The majority of the time, it's senior schools, um, and I just love it.
Okay, good. Well, thank you for your honesty there. I guess that just shows us maybe it's okay if you're a schools worker to find the age bracket that you're comfortable with, that you're confident that you can deliver to, and go from there. And other schools workers will fill that gap where maybe you're not comfortable, so that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, Wayne, you know this. There's such a variety even of schools work in a school, isn't there? From assemblies and more of like a production, collective worship type of thing versus an RE lesson where you're just with a group of anywhere from 20, 30-ish students. So there's very different skill sets, isn't there? Even with the type of
Yes.
schools work that you're doing.
Oh yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
I take, for example, an assembly. How I describe it sometimes is that you may have, 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes with a relatively large group, 2, 3, 400 children, and then my hope is to be able to share something of Jesus in that short time. I love doing assemblies. That's how I first got involved 40 years ago. And then you've got the opportunity of doing say, an hour-long lesson with a particular year group. So there's opportunity for what I call a Q&A. So now regularly, so last week, one of the schools I was in, boys' school called Desborough. At the end of the lesson, I just said, right, got a chance for a question and answer. And they'll ask you questions about faith, about football. The best question I like is when they say, how did I get involved? And I just share some of my story and journey. But when you've got a smaller group, 20, 25 pupils, and you've got like an hour, there's an opportunity for a little bit more interaction. So I really enjoy both sides of it, the sort of lesson stuff as well as the assemblies. And then the other bit is what I call the hanging around ministry, just being in schools, chatting to students and staff in different ways.
This is totally off the cuff, but I'm just curious, Wayne, if you have any advice for me and those who do lunch clubs. So I've started volunteering in my daughter's school doing a lunch club, which I absolutely love. We have 30 minutes, but in reality, with the kids coming in, settling from eating their lunch really quickly and then needing to leave, to the next subject, we only have about 20 minutes.
Mm,
And the ages are a bit younger, so year 3, year 4, but I mean, they do lock in, they are engaged. But how do we have permission from the school to
mm,
really talk about any Christian subject we want to. They've said it can be like a church service, which is
mm,
amazing to have that freedom. But then we're finding it a struggle to make it meaty, I guess, and just being intentional with that time, but also fun, multisensory engaging, all those things. Any advice
mm.
for me and those struggling with lunch
Yeah.
clubs?
Personally, I'm not involved with lunch clubs, school Christian groups, or traditionally Christian unions. But the suggestion or the advice I would give, and learning from other people that have been schools workers, is that one of the key things is the consistency. So, in a typical
Mm.
term of 6 or 12 weeks, if there is a primary school lunch club and you are able to go in every week, the children will really appreciate the fact that you are there and you are showing up every week, and there's maybe an element of consistency and fun and continuity and friendship and games and an opportunity to share a little bit. I don't think it's appropriate, or it obviously doesn't work. In 30 minutes, it is impossible to do Genesis through to Revelation with a group of 7-year-olds. But if you can share just something, and then you can build on that the following week, and there are resources and ideas. For example, the first time I encouraged some youngsters who were wanting to run a Christian group, I said, well, okay, let's take a half term or a traditional term now of say 6 or 7 weeks. And I suggested was, how about a series on, say, people Jesus met? And maybe look at the paralytic in Mark 2, the blind Bartimaeus, Zacchaeus, my favorite Bible story from Luke 19, just different individual characters, one character a week on how Jesus met such people. And then there you've got a term's worth of stuff. Another term, it could be stories that Jesus told, parables. Another term, it could be, spring term could be um, Easter, 6 or 7 weeks going through the 1 week of Easter. So different things like that. But if it's a group and it's a Christian group, some opportunity where even if you've only got 10, 15, 20, 25 minutes to be able to share something. Bearing in mind, these children have chosen and have given consent, or their parents, carers have given consent for them to come to this lunchtime or after school club. So it's an opportunity whilst they're in school on their territory to be able to share something of Jesus and then build on it as each week goes by.
Yeah, yeah. And just to confirm, we do have consent, and that is key
Yes.
and important for those who have not done lunch clubs before or any type of
Mm.
schools work. Consent
Yeah,
is
just
key.
whilst it comes to my memory, there, it wouldn't be appropriate to use names or schools, but sadly, sometimes people have gone into schools from local churches and basically have blown it. I know that personally, and so that's why if we are a visitor, and that's like sometimes always when I'm in a school, so I've got my little CCIS lanyard that I wear and I sign in, and my hope is to be able to be invited back. And if anyone's watching this or thinking about already involved in schools or wanting to approach a school, how can we serve? But we need to be sensitive. We need to be cautious. And schools are very different to what we can say at a festival or in a church. And so I just would throw that in as a note of caution, because if any of us go in and we blow it, we not only blow it for ourselves, but we blow it for any other people. And I know that through personal experience nearly 40 years ago.
Mm.
Yeah. So you're kind of already touching on our next question of how can youth workers get involved in schools work and what practical advice would you give? So based off of what you just said is and I've heard this many times of doors closing because it's tricky in that schools work is almost like frontline youth work or frontline children's ministry, except it's not in our house, as in not in the church building. We're going to a different building, a different space. And, you touched on it. We need to be respectful and be the hands and feet of Jesus, don't we? As youth
Mm,
workers, children's
mm,
workers, church leaders, etc. The list goes on.
mm.
But in addition to that, do you have any other advice, practical tips that you would give to those who are involved or looking to get involved in schools work from a church perspective?
Yep. So from a local church perspective, here are some thoughts. Here's the phrase: how can we serve? How can we serve a local primary school or secondary school, and maybe making connections with people whom we already know? So if we're part of a church, and in our church there are some children or some young people or some members of staff, chatting with them first, and then saying, what do you think? Would you think it would be appropriate? How can we serve? Because there can be a variety of ways. If we think we can just go in to a school and say, oh, Ofsted says this, or the curriculum says this, that doesn't really go down too well with head teachers. So an approach, how can we serve? There's something called what I call TMM, which is tea making ministry, or pit stop, or just people going in from the local community, the local church community, to serve tea, coffee, nice cakes, that kind of stuff. And there's something that happens around here on a Wednesday. It's called Wake Up Wednesday. It's just brilliant. A Scripps Union colleague, Jenny, I've just been in touch with her recently because she told me of a fantastic story down in Portsmouth, I think, of a church that is open 4 days a week after school as the pupils come by. So key thing was, how can we serve? And the other key thing I would say is, please, please, please before approaching the school for the first time, consider talking to others who have done it. And my personal recommendation, because I'm connected with Scripture Union, is go on the Scripture Union website, on the schools. There is online training that's happening, or in person, if that can work, where you can learn about the do's and the don'ts, the pitfalls to avoid, things to do. So I recommend that 200%. Scripture Union training for volunteers, vicars, youth workers, schools workers, so that we can try to eliminate or minimize any potential disasters. And if we can do a training either in person or online to learn about how to approach a school, what to do, etc., that's probably going to work much better than just going in what I call cold. Last thing I'll say on this is that, so when I started, this is what happened. So for 2 years, I was visiting schools, and I was involved with Scripture Union as a volunteer on a holiday. And so then when I started, I wrote a letter to the head teacher of the schools and said, "Oh, hello, my name is Wayne Dixon. I'm a schools worker with Scripture Union, etc." Uh, Nothing happened. And I thought, okay, now, fortunately, I was already involved in Langley Grammar, Windsor Girls, Upton Court Grammar. So that carried on. And then what I then learned is that each of the head teachers actually never got the letter. What happened was the letter went to said school. Someone in the office saw it, said Scripture Union, said Wayne Dixon, went straight in the bin. So now what I say, or if I was starting today, or if I say to people who are going into schools work, is these days either a letter or an email. And then I say, give it 2 or 3 weeks. If you've not heard anything back, then I would say a courtesy phone call just to reception and say, oh, I'm just following up this letter, and then just go from there. And then at least, I didn't do that. I felt that that was too pushy when no one replied. I felt that it just meant no. But by doing that and then having a face-to-face conversation in school at a mutually convenient time with the senior teacher, might be the assistant head, or head of RE, or the head teacher, or whoever's nominated, and then going from there. That's the kind of advice that I would give. But please don't take things for granted. Please be cautious. And schools will love it if what we do is good and respectful.
That's great. Lots
Absolutely.
of good practical advice there. So he's told you how to make the first point of contact. He's pointed you to some fantastic training from a Scripture Union. And then also don't forget, obviously, you can visit CCI Schools website, which is ccischools.org.uk, and that has all the information I think you'll need to resources. And if you wanted to contact Wayne, you can find his details there.
Can I just share
Yeah,
one
absolutely.
takeaway, one more thing, because it's been
Yeah.
the most significant thing that I've been involved in. And as I said, if you want to know more, best thing is to go on either the CCI Schools website, or the Scripture Union website, or just contact me. But it's to do with Christmas and Easter presentations. So in a couple of weeks' time, my colleague and I, Beth, will be visiting a number of schools. We do a 60-minute presentation in school. It's called Easter Cracked. There's also one called Christmas Unwrapped. I've been involved personally just over 30 years, started by the late Reverend Jem Sewell when he was the minister at Slough Baptist Church. And Scripture Union have just got a brilliant generic Christmas Unwrapped presentation. It's on the Scripture Union website. The Easter Cracked one will follow. But this is a way that a local church can connect with a school. Ideally, it can happen in the local church, but there are issues around that, or it can happen in the school. That's been my most recent experience. And it provides an opportunity. In our case, it's with year 6. It can be with year 5 or year 4, for people to learn about what I call Christmas, the reason for the season, in a fun, engaging, memorable way. So there's a rap that was written by someone called Anita for Christmas, and then someone else called Sarah wrote an Easter rap. And then the youngsters love it. They learn about Christmas, Easter. They've been in a church building, and I'd recommend, if you're interested and you don't know about it, check out the Scripture Union website, or do contact me. There's a video that you can look at and think, yeah, we could probably do this for Easter or Christmas. And it's been the most significant thing, because from Altrincham to Woodley, And from Gravesend to Glasgow, different locations have done it over the past 30 years. And around here, about 50 schools will be involved for Easter, and we're involved at Christmas, involving 9, 10, 11 churches or having it in their school. And people remember it, they love it, and it's the most significant thing I've been involved in. And I definitely wanted to share that today.
No, thank you. That sounds really fun and it seems like something that's been very impactful already. So I'll definitely put links in our show notes to that so you can find out more about that. So thank you for sharing. So very pleased that you were able to join us and share your 40 years worth of experience with us. I know the work that Anna is doing in schools is also very important, and just as what's been mentioned in terms of building relationships and connecting with others that are doing the same type of work so that you can support each other, you can let each other know what's going on and keep each other updated on the work that you're doing in different schools. So thank you so much, Wayne, for your time and for sharing with us. Thank you, Anna, for also joining us, being my co-host for this episode. And yeah, we just pray that those workers out there will continue to be encouraged, that those that are thinking about doing schools work will feel encouraged to take that step and to reach out and to partner with others and just to help young people get to know Jesus. So thank you both for joining us. Do hope that you'll join us in our next one. Bye for now.